Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Religion plays a very strong role in many people's lives, as does connection to family. It's no different for Monty and Mario, who I have the opportunity of introducing you to today. We talk about some of the places they've lived. We talk about their journey to family creation, and we talk about using a traditional surrogate, being someone that they know, carrying their child for them because she loves them and she wanted them to have the opportunity to become parents. Their story is beautiful and inspiring, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Welcome, everyone. I just want to welcome today Mario and Monty to the show to tell you their story about family creation. So welcome to you both. Would you please take a moment and just let our listeners know who you are and about the members of your family?
Yeah, my name is Mario Foreman Powell. From Marela, I am Papa, our daughter, and I am a vocalist in the Air Force Band. And by the way, anything that I say does not reflect the views of the DoD Air Force in the United States.
Understood.
But yeah, but that is me all day, every day. We're traveling around the Indo-Pacific doing morale gigs or something like that, but that's what I do.
And I am Monty Foreman Powell, and Marilla knows me as Daddy or Dada. And we are, so I'm a mental health provider for the state of Hawaii and also Nebraska. So I work in private practice as well as I work for the state and government, working with probationers, people who are recently released from incarceration. So that is what I do for a living, aside from being a full-time dad alongside my husband. So those are the joys of my jobs.
That's fantastic. And totally different types of work you do, but both equally powerful work that you both do, which is inspiring because it reminds us that regardless of being parents, we are also individuals, and we get to have these powerful, wonderful, creative lives outside of our role of parenting. And that teaches our children something, right? To see us growing as they grow up, becoming and being people that we strive to show them who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And alongside me being a military spouse, I'm also a military veteran myself. I served in the Army. And so Mari and I switched roles. This time is a little bit different because now we're parents. Before it was just me and him, exploring the world ourselves. But now we switch roles. So we're on that side of the coin now.
There you go. There you go. That is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Of all of the different ways that members of the queer community can create their families, can you tell us how you chose to create your family and what drew you to that path?
Yeah, so that's an interesting journey. We've certainly had a journey. For the longest, Mario did not want kids. He grew up in a smaller family than myself.
I grew up with one sister.
Yeah. One sister, and I grew up with being number 7 of 7, then 7 of 12.
Wow.
So yeah, my mom and dad together had 7, and then my dad rolled the stone, and wherever he had laid his hat was his home.
Oh,
and so
okay.
And we're not talking about the Temptations. But yeah, so I grew up with a really big family. So I've always wanted children. In fact, I always thought I would have to live into a lie, and like a lot of people do in this world, especially in our country. They live a false life with a woman to have a family because I thought that was going to be the only way. this was before I came out to the world, came out as, gay. So I thought that I was going to have to, marry a woman, have kids that way. I always wanted 3 children. However, as time passed, I kind of started coming into myself and realized that I wanted children. And then I met Mario, and he was like, nope, I don't want any children. I was like, okay, how are we going to do this? Because I like him, but that's a big deal. So,
And for many, it's a deal breaker.
yeah. And
That's
it
true.
certainly at first was kind of like that I was there. I was just like, I can't not leave this earth without having children, knowing that some part of me is still moving on with life. But somehow, some way, I don't know how it came about, but he agreed one day that we would, try to have a baby somehow.
Yeah, and Monty kind of he talked to me like the reasons why he wanted kids and whatnot, and as you stated, being almost, I can't say single, kid household, because my sister was 4 years apart, so I kind of had the house to myself for a little bit. But understanding, okay, why, and as he started talking, it made sense, and I had to kind of, put my big boy hat on and like, all right, some of the things, one of the things that he said that poked out to me was, when you leave this earth, who's your stuff go to, and who's going to be taking care of you, like all that type of stuff. That's just not the only reason, but
but the legacy.
Yeah, that made a big impact. And so since then, here we are with a 2.5-year-old.
Yeah, and a part of that journey, originally we were just trying to see what options we had.
Yeah.
So we first started looking into seeing what adoption might look like. Because, I think at first, at least for myself, I did want to go through the surrogacy route, but at that time, I was like, there's no way we're going to be able to afford this. I was just getting out of the military, or almost out of the military at that time. And he was working at the church how we met, so we weren't really making the most of money. So I was just like, there's no way we're going to be able to afford this. So we probably need to be looking at adoption, which again, that wasn't necessarily our first choice, but we're like, you know what? There are children out there that need to be adopted. Why not? And at least, we'll be able to still have a part of our, journey and something that we can still pass down.
Right.
And we started doing some research around that. And this was, we were in Colorado at the time. We kind of got a lot of shut doors. I know I was really, really heavy on that. Mario kind of let me lead that just because I was a little more immersed into that world. So I would do like a lot of research to see what companies, agencies, the process. And I remember calling several companies and things like that. And I just remember being either told, like we need to have all these things set up, and if not, we're going to be denied the right to adopt. And it was just a very strenuous process. And then I was looking into the military things, and I was just like, okay, well, what could they help with, to see like what kind of financial assistance or any programs. And then I later found out that there was not many programs that they offered that would help with the process of buying, or not buying, but like, expenses and things like that we may have to endure the cost. So it's like, okay, well, that's out of the picture. And, so now we know we're not going to be able to afford surrogacy. So doesn't mean we never have children. And so,
Yeah.
and then we kind of, you're from your friend, how we met Ariel.
Oh yeah. I didn't know if there's like something you wanted to kind of go into that, but
you've had many points along the path as you've known that this is something huge that you both wanted. You'd come to the decision that you both wanted this, and then having to navigate the different hurdles of grief along the way. This is what we want. Oh no, this isn't possible. I'm going to grieve that. This is what we want. Oh no. So keeping your optimism in place so that you do continue to forge forward, that must have taken its toll. How did the two of you navigate that?
Honestly, you mentioned the grief part. That is a huge part of our relationship. Now, um, especially how we met like in the church, right?
Mhm.
So, me being there for about 6 years, we had the music ministry was going extremely well. We were doing recordings, we're out in the community all over the state of Colorado. And then when it was found out that we were together, because that's how we met in the church,
Mhm.
that was taken away from me they had me sit down for about 6 months, and they wanted me to get an annulment, us to get an annulment. Um,
Wow.
and Surprisingly, what a lot of people don't know is we did actually go through with the annulment. The first part of it, when we went to the courts and whatnot, they said, hey, in the state of Colorado, there's specific reasons why you have to have an annulment. And one of them, one of them was says, you did not consummate the marriage. I was like, how you gonna know I didn't consummate the
Right.
marriage? And
Yeah.
so we put that down, and we went to the court, and the judge like, we need you to come back behind the desk. He's like, there doesn't look nothing wrong, like doesn't look like nothing wrong is going with you guys. So someone is like forcing you or telling you to get annulment. We need to know so we can do investigation. And at that point,
Wow.
I I was like, we're gonna hold off on going through this. After 90 days, it looks like, they after 90 days they kind of take away the annulment, but I did not want the church to go through that type of stuff.
Right.
But yeah, 6 months being set down, there was a lot of stuff, mental stuff, and all that stuff that took place.
Mhm.
Um, and then having that job kind of taken away from me, that was another grief that he was with me for,
Sure.
because that was my passion, being with the
Yeah.
church, being choirs, being with those people, the musicians, all of that. So if to me, if we got through that together, and that was 5, 6 years with no one knowing that we were together, no pictures on Facebook, no social media presentation, no nothing. Don't even have pictures in our phone of our first, whatever's, because we're so scared that someone was going to find out. So 5, 6
Mhm.
years of that. But if we were able to get through all that, I have a feeling that we could get through a lot of other things. And that just kind of was the stepping stone of making us stronger as a couple, and kind of branching off to the family as well. Like,
Mhm.
if you want to add on to that at all.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was different stages of grief, as you mentioned. Because again, when we first met, I had already out to the world. And so I had to go backwards, back into the closet kind of,
Right.
because of, us at the church, and it was not acceptable to be openly gay, and especially in a relationship and a marriage in the church, and also in some level of like ministry. So I had these wonderful hopes, like, oh, it's finally going to happen. Like you mentioned, like, oh, it's going to happen. I finally don't have to falsely marry a woman and not really be in love with them. And now I hurt her because I just wanted to marry with her to have children. And then now it's a bunch of mess. And now I might not even have the children that I want because now there's a nasty divorce. And we
Mhm.
know that all too well of people who get in marriages, out of, a lie because they're afraid to tell their families that they're gay, or, or something other than heterosexual. So yeah, we had the opportunity and we started talking about it. And then like we had to go back into hush hush mode with the church stuff. And then finally came out of all of that through all of our journey that we experienced with the church, to meeting a wonderful person that we met through Mario's college friend.
Yeah, one of my friends in college, he just happened to be one of our roommates, and that's how I got to know him. But after college, this is confusing. So his wife's cousin, we met her through, they would have like these cousin dinners, and so we go to their house all the time. And um, there was a joke going around, I was like, oh yeah, you guys want a baby? Ariel's fertile, blah blah blah. And we're like, ah ha 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 ha. It was just a joke, and we do that for almost a month or so. And then the next morning after one of the hangouts, she had given us a call and said, hey, we would actually really do that for you. I would actually have your guys' baby. And we're like, wait, what? So that's kind of where that journey starts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a gift that you first of all, I'm sure you are well aware that just doesn't happen for people,
No.
Mhm.
almost ever. And then to have somebody call you up and say, no, like I was serious. I know we were kidding, but I was serious, and I want to do this for you. You must have
Mhm.
just felt like you'd won the lottery.
Literally, I was the one that got the call first. Now, mind you, this had been years after we had been trying on our own to like, research and, figure out adoption versus surrogacy. Even for a while, I was even trying to like, adopt my nephew at the time, who was much like my child to me still to this day. I was like, at least, I got my nephew who I've helped raise much of my life. So I mean, we're not all hope is not lost. And so we had kind of almost given up a little bit of hope for a while, being honest. And then that happened, and we're like, whoa, like, wait, are you for real? So she calls me, and it literally, when you say felt like we won a lottery, it literally felt like that. I was like, oh my God, finally. I was just so shocked that like she was on the phone. And I ran upstairs to go tell Mario, because he was upstairs at the time. And I was just like, oh my God, like, she said she'll do it. Like, I just remember, I don't remember exactly what I was saying, but like I was just like just overwhelmed with like happiness and joy. And obviously I was like, okay, let's go tomorrow. I'm like, obviously there's a process, but in my mind at the time, I'm like, finally, this is like, at that time we were year 6, 7 in our marriage. So we had been in it for a while. So it's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is time. Like, time is ticking. Let's go.
Right.
We're approaching age 30.
Yeah.
So yeah, she offered to do that for us. And then one of her reasons that she said she offered to do it for us, because she had realized how kind of people that we were at the time, and she saw what we were going through and all of the struggles we were, going through to try to start a family, and the agencies and the expense and all that stuff like that. And it was like her way of giving back. She said that she always wanted to be able to give back something big, even if it's not necessarily monetary.
Mm.
She wanted to give something big to a deserving family, and it was us that she chose.
It's amazing. That's such
Yeah.
a wow. That's so powerful. And truthfully, you two had been through it. You deserved to have something positive come through for you at
Yeah.
that time, right?
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, so then, so we're looking at surrogacy. Someone else is carrying your child for you. Can I ask some questions like, did she use her own egg? Did you have to use an egg donor? Did you,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
How did all of that, how did all of that play out?
yeah.
Mhm.
So just like everything, for us, everything has a story behind it of the
Mhm.
reason why I got there. And so one day, we were avid Ellen DeGeneres watchers, her show. And so I was in the basement. I'll never forget this. I was in the basement and I was watching her show. I was like, I want to write into her show and just to see what happens, and mainly just to talk about the big heart that Monty has, for people and whatnot. Not even necessarily talking about the kid portion, but um, just pretty much that. I remember that was at like 4 something, and I was downstairs in the basement playing the piano or whatever, and I got this unknown call. I was like, I'm not answering that.
Right? Like we all do, just turn the phone upside down.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, it's pretty exciting. And then something at the last minute was like, you should answer that. And so I answered it, and it was someone from the show was like, hey, we saw one of your requests, blah, blah, blah. And so later on down the road, I kind of hooked Monty into it because I wanted to surprise him a little bit.
Mhm.
Uh and
Definitely.
and there's some things that took place for them to actually make it a surprise for both of us because it was during COVID,
Mhm.
so things were always up and down in the air. So so they actually had us on their show. It was kind of weird because it wasn't a live audience, but it was like TV screens everywhere, just like you kind of see on the
Mhm.
on the TV. And we had good conversations. And it's Mario Monti on Google or something like that. You can look up that
Mhm.
episode.
Mhm.
But we were genuinely surprised, us getting on the show, all that type of
Mhm.
stuff. And so throughout that, we're on the show. We talked about it. why I called in, all that type of stuff. We ended up playing a game that she had made up with the title, and she ended up giving us $20,000, and that $20,000 went straight to our surrogate, and we had done some other things as well to kind of help raise money for that. But in that, we began to get sponsors for things. And so this company called Mosey Baby had reached out to us, and that's how we ended up doing it. If I want to go in detail, Mosey Baby is an IUI. Is it IUI? Or?
It's at home like insemination. So you're basically, it's like you're taking out the middleman of the IUI process where they're basically you're the doctor or someone else is doing it. You basically doing it yourself. Basically in olden days, they used to call it the turkey baster. It's kind of like that process, but more scientific research behind that process and the way that the specific syringe that they use and the efficiency of it.
Right. So I remember we said, all right, we're gonna do it. Let's start on Thursday, and we did like 3 days in a row. I don't think we need to, but whatever.
You just do it, right? You want to take every chance.
Yeah. So she came over, and it kind of was awkward for us because like we never had to force ourselves to do stuff.
Yeah.
And we actually did a mystery sperm. So we both did our thing in the cup, and we like swirled it around and suctioned it up. Yep. And just to see what happens. Whoever gets it gets it. And
basically we both wanted a fair chance.
Yeah.
Of course.
Because we knew that we both wanted a fair chance to be parents. We didn't know if this would be like our only chance, or maybe in the future we would have another chance. And so we both wanted a fair chance, and so that we didn't have to do a rock, paper, scissors or making that decision, we let fate decide which way it would go. I secretly was hoping that we would have twins. That one would be his, one would be mine. It didn't happen that way. I'm stuck, but nonetheless, it was a very successful journey with everything that just happened in the way that it happened.
Yeah.
And so what Mario didn't share with you was the Mosey Baby company that reached out to us. I had already been doing research about them because again, remember Mario kind of let me steamroll a lot of this stuff. Because,
there's a lot of stuff I didn't know that he was doing. So
So he was just kind of like, okay, well, I know how much he knew how much I really wanted to be a dad. He wanted to be a dad too, but I was like super like, So he kind of let me steamroll out of the research, and I like research anyway. So we had already been researching this company, and we were going to go with this company whether they had sponsored us or not. But we just got so lucky that from the episode from the Ellen DeGeneres, they were one of the people that sponsored us, and it was unbelievable that we got the call from Maureen, who's the founder of that company. I believe founder or either one of the CEOs or something like that. And so that's how we got that's the process that we took to become dads. And it took the first time, which is very rare. Which we were like, okay, bringing in our spiritual, we're like, for those that don't think that we are, meant to have children, if that wasn't so, how has all of this played out so well for us that we got everything that we needed? We got the right surrogate, somebody who we trusted, because that was another thing, finding somebody we trusted that was not going to take our baby from us, because we've heard cases like that. Even at the time, we were stationed in Nebraska, and Nebraska, as interesting as that state is, that stuff, they are not completely spun up to things. And so there's some things that we weren't allowed to do, or we had to go through lawyers and all that type of stuff as well. But I'll let you. I'm sorry.
No, I'm you've got me drawn right in. I'm happy to just keep listening.
Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back. You know about Baby Ready because you're listening to this podcast, so you know that we are all about queer family planning and helping you have the family of your dreams. But did you know that we don't abandon you once your baby arrives? We actually offer parenting coaching as well, and that's not just for the newborn phase, although we are there for that, but it's through toddlerhood and young children, tweens, and even through the teen years. When you need someone unbiased to lend an ear so that they can hear where your struggles truly are and help you come up with a path and a plan that feels truly right for you and your individual family, don't hesitate to reach out. We are always happy to be there for you. Visit us at www.babyready.info for more information.
One of the primary obstacles, and this is something that the two of you learned early on, is the cost that can be associated for creating a family. You had the opportunity to have, get a gift from Ellen that you could share with the woman who was going to carry your child. You had the sponsorship that made it that much more possible. But at the end of the day, it's not without its costs. Even if, and it's not just an if, but even if it's just the emotional toll that it takes to get you to this point, right?
Yeah.
You wanted to have each a fair shake at being the biologic connection to this child, so you figured out a way to make that happen. You've just been so ingenious in all of your approaches, and you're right. I mean, for those who want to criticize members of the queer community for wanting to create families of their own, if your faith is such that it inspires the decisions you make on a daily basis, then you have to believe that you wouldn't have a child if that wasn't right to do. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so I'm glad that you're able to say, I guess we are supposed to have a family.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, like I said, we live a lot of our life by is everything happens for a reason, and for us, like I said, everything just happened to literally be lined up in place, and very much, certainly it did help what Ellen helped us with the monetary gifts and kind of gave us some of the basic necessities for our daughter. Yet we've done a lot of work on our own way before that.
Sure.
By the time we got on the Ellen show, we had already made up our mind. We had already had our surrogate, and who's our best friend to this day. We had already had conversations. We had already been planning, because I know a lot of people kind of ask, like, well, did she become your surrogate like afterwards? It was like, no, she was our surrogate long before you all seen us on TV. Now, thereafter, we had a lot of people pouring into wanting to be our surrogate. Once they saw us on TV, and we're like, we appreciate these offers and things like that. However, even outside of the Ellen show, we always wanted to make sure we knew who our surrogate was, because we have a very different type of style. Because a lot of people who have surrogate journeys, they're not really connected with the parents. It's kind of like a business exchange. I know that sounds horrible to say, but it is. And at least in some government's law, it's like you're paying for a child, and thank you for your business. Have a great day. Here's your receipt. But for us, we didn't want that type of lifestyle. We wanted to know who the mother of our child would be, especially if they're sharing the DNA. And yes, Ariel used her egg. She has her own family, her own husband, her own children. And we wanted to build a family community around that. And so we wanted our daughter to know who her mother was, her health history. We wanted to know if things are going on, like what's, natural versus what's nurture, things like that. So it was important for us to know who our surrogate was.
Even still this day, as you talked about, like, she will know her as her mom. And we talk about almost every single day. That's just an amazing thing with our relationship. And she calls her mama or Ariel or whatever she wants to do. And as they get older, as she gets older, they can decide what they want to do with that relationship as well. So,
right.
And even with her husband, whatever they want to, wherever that is, that's what it's going to be. We're not going to be the ones that mold her to say, oh no, you can only do this with her. You can do that with their kids. And that's not how that works for us. So,
that is important to allow them to forge their own path, especially because Ariel is a part of your life and was before any of this even started. So letting them create whatever dynamic amongst them works well for everyone involved is really the most respectful path forward, right?
If you don't mind me saying, also, like, even like when they get older, I know a lot of people, they don't want to let their kids know who their whoever is. And so when they get older, when they're 18, 19, whatever they are, I don't want that to be a surprise factor. Like, oh, wait, you're not my mom. Oh, wait, you're not my dad, or, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Having that knowledge already growing up there's no surprise factor for them. And they can even
100%.
have a stronger communication and walk for themselves.
Absolutely. And to be fair, in our families, the reality is we know that somebody had to help out from outside the dynamic of the parents. So,
Right.
whether they're donor conceived with a couple that have two uteruses, whether they're egg donor received or surrogate carried for people such as yourself, two men without a uterus, like we know that there's going to be somebody else involved. So to pretend that there's not just feels like there's that big elephant in the room that nobody's talking about. And I feel like our kids in our community tend to just be more understanding about family creation processes. It's just a dynamic of conversation. So, okay, so I have two dads. Obviously, someone else carried to give birth to me. So you have to just have these conversations from a young age, right? It's just part of the regular vernacular. And when you do that, you make it less forbidden, less scary, less surreal, right?
And it also will open up other topics that they just feel more comfortable talking to you about, whatever it may be, because you already created that space to be open, to be vulnerable, to be emotional, whatever it is. I believe everything kind of domino effects to each other. So
No, it's okay. I agree. Are there any words of caution that you would offer to members of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community when it comes to looking at creating a family? Or, I mean, you two have been through it. Are there any words of caution that you would pass along to people just so that they are prepared in advance, potentially?
Yes. And so one of the things that we found out along our journey that we weren't expecting was when we did choose to go our surrogate route, and in the state of Nebraska, it was considered like gestational carrier. Every state's different. So every place is different. Every country's different, depending on who's listening.
So I guess that's the first bullet. Know your state that you're in and what the rules are.
So everybody, it's very important to know where your state or laws are, what they deem as gestational carrier versus who goes on the birth certificate. At least for us, that was in the state of Nebraska. Just because you have a gestational carrier contract that we hired lawyers for both ourselves and our surrogate, which is another cost, so very costly. We still, even though we had all of that written up and protecting, the state of Nebraska still didn't protect our rights to be both her parents. We had to then I had to adopt our daughter, and this is long before we even knew who was the biological father. And we now know, of course, that my husband Mario is the biological father. We knew that when she was born, looking at her, but at the time, we had to decide at the hospital before we left the hospital, and we could not leave the hospital until one of us. We had to figure out which one of us was going to sign the birth certificate. Well, at that time, we were told that the laws had changed, and that wouldn't have been so. That we both they changed the birth certificate from mother, father to parent one, parent two. And even though it was parent one, parent two, we still had to only choose one of us as parent. And they said that one had to be the mom, the birth mother of the child, even though we had a contract that we gave the hospital and said, hey, well, we have a gestational carrier contract. She signed her rights away. She's aware that, her husband, and that's another thing, her husband had to sign and say that she basically had an affair, which was interesting. That she, in order to basically say that she had a baby out of wedlock. Because again, this is like the traditional Christian values within certain laws within the country and in the state. And so that was interesting that her husband had to sign saying, it's not my baby, even though he had nothing to do with this other than being married to our surrogate. So she had to basically get permission from her husband about her body, the child that she birthed. So anyways, those are some of the things that, to pay attention to. Again, every state's different. I'm not saying that all states are that way. We just know for what happened with us. Just be careful with that. Just because you have a gestational care contract that you may spend thousands of dollars to get written up, it does not mean that you're completely protected. The mother can change her mind. She had up to 48 hours to change her mind. That's what they told us. She had 48 hours to change her mind.
There's no we could do about it.
And there's literally nothing we can do other than it would become a legal battle of custody at that point in time. That we would then go take her to court and say, well, we want joint custody of our child. Because she couldn't legally let's just take it away because biologically one of us were the father, but there would be a custody battle. And that's what they told us, that just because you got this contract, it doesn't mean that you are, just guaranteed to take your daughter away from the hospital. And so that was one of the toughest decisions for us to make, is who's going to be on the birth certificate and why. And then now I'm going through a whole, in addition to surrogacy, then we got to pay a whole other separate fees and costs for an adoption. So we did both surrogacy and adoption for a child that was our own.
Yeah. I think another thing I would say is just to make sure you have a good close circle that actually supports and loves you. Your friends, whoever that may be. Because obviously for us being in Nebraska, being two African-American men, gay African-American men, and then her mom is white. That was a big deal being in Nebraska. And we got a lot of heat. We got a lot of attacks, social media, all that type of stuff. So being there, that group to have your back and kind of speak up for you sometimes, if you need help, whatever that may be, because it will be, unfortunately, as much as we're saying we're progressing in America, there are some progressions, but there are also people that are not completely for that progression. One person that stated about diversity is that it's one thing to ask someone to dance, but it's another thing to actually dance with them. And it's a thing, because I can say, oh yeah, I'm for LGBTQ, all that stuff but when I need you to be if I need someone to be, oh, you're this, I'm sorry, we're not gonna, so just the bottom line, just having a good support group underneath you to kind of encourage you, push you, all that in your process.
And lift you up when you need it.
Absolutely.
Because there will be times that you need it.
Because you and your family, like beforehand, being transparent, if we're on a documentary on Hulu called
We Live Here in the Midwest.
We Live Here in the Midwest, and you'll see kind of our family dynamics. My grandpa was a pastor, and we grew up very traditional. And so that part, us being alone together, and then having the baby, that was kind of like, what is going on type of deal. Now my mom is a little bit more accepting. She's not like pro LGBT, all that, but she definitely loves Monty. She loves Marela, and that definitely shows itself. But your own family sometimes will not always have your back as well. So absolutely.
And we hear those stories all the time, right? Unfortunately, we hear those stories all the time. People whose families turn their back on them, and then they feel not only do they have this journey that they're taking that's different than the majority of the world, but they're also now taking it all by themselves. And where do they turn? So you're right, creating that support network for yourself. And social media is fantastic. I mean, I found you through social media, and there are great YouTube channels and Instagram channels and TikTok pages to give us all kinds of information and love and support and encouragement. But those same pages are often filled with lots of hate as well. And to filter through it is, and to not to have that sort of try to have that slough off you, because you can't carry that. You can't carry someone else's opinion as, and give it any weight if it's hate filled. But it's still hard. And the world is changing, sure, but I think there's lots of times I feel like it's changing in the wrong direction in the last half dozen
Yeah.
years or so.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it just
Yeah.
basically, you know, if you haven't built a tough skin, you're almost, you kind of want to prepare for that, regardless, because at that time you'll start to learn who's really your supporters and who's not. And just
Mhm.
what you said about social media is sometimes your greatest support is going to be from strangers.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
people that you love the most or that you believe that love you the most. A lot of times you'll find out who's conditionally loving you versus unconditionally loving you.
Yeah.
So there is some pros and cons to that. At least you get to kind of filter out who really is in
Sure.
your court. It could be hurtful, certainly.
Sure.
But be prepared for anything, even those people that you may be, you know, the most surprised by when this happens. And so for those parents to be, there are people out there, and very much like what my husband and I, we stand by is sometimes you have to be the reference point you want to see. And for us, we know that we are often a reference point because, again, it is rare to see two African American men in our religion and our cultures and jobs and play a lot of, we stamp a lot of little check marks in much of our jobs and occupations. And so we don't get to see ourselves enough. And so rather than, you know, trying to look for something you may not find and give up hope, you have to be that sometimes, which I'm grateful that we took this route and we chose to keep going, because now we are a representation for many other people that to come that reach out to us till this day.
When you were still in the planning process and knowing that your goal was to create a family, and you're still thinking about, okay, well, how do we do that? Who do we need to talk to? Who would you have wanted to have the opportunity to learn from or speak to be able to get the kinds of answers that you were looking for? Or is there someone?
Who would we like to have heard from, you said?
Yeah, or learn from or have support you or
That's a good question.
Yeah, I think the reason why that's a tough question is because it was hard to find someone that looked like us that was doing it, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, certainly.
It's been the church scene, that's been the, you know, everything that we went through in Nebraska and all that type of stuff. So I'm even trying to think of celebrities.
It was the one of a kind. Seriously, like, you know, unfortunately for our case, not necessarily unfortunately, but because we're quite fortunate now, but the reason why it's taking us a while to answer that question is because just like I was just saying is that reference point, we even still to this day, I'm still trying to think about anybody that's in our, at least in our nearest circle, or even a public figure that we know that looks like us. And this is no offense to, you know, a same-sex couple of white, you know, race or another race, but we see a lot of, you know, same-sex, two white men, very supportive families, and that's nice, and it's kind of inspiring at the same time for us with us being deeply rooted in our culture. We would have loved to see something from our own culture because our cultures are different from those of any other race, especially for what we've been through in this country. So we would have liked to see, it would have been nice to have another same-sex couple that's doing what we're doing now, but still to this day, we're just trying to think, I can't think of any. But aside from that, I mean, a lot of our advice came from people who were either heterosexual or like a white couple that was like progressive, but we don't literally have any. I can't even think of still to this right now.
If you're out there, shoot us a message on Instagram or
Yeah.
Facebook, please.
Seriously. Yeah, I think for the first time, I think the other day, I saw a same-sex male couple, and they reached out to us actually on Instagram. And now we're connected. And it was like, oh my God, there's another same-sex African-American couple raising, you know, their child. And it was inspiring that way. And so I think thinking about that, we see that. The fact that we can't think about it, that shows you like.
That's telling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's telling. And that's exactly why I reached out to you to ask if I could share your story, because we need a broad spectrum of stories to hear, because my story is different than your story is different than the next person coming down the street. We need to be able to learn from one another so that we can start to find the spots to ask the questions
Yeah.
before we even start seeking true answers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to give you your morning back, but first, I want to ask you, what is your very favorite part of parenting?
We were actually talking
Yeah.
about it today. We were talking about this because we went to walk to go pick up Maria from our daycare. We were just talking about all the little things that she does that we think is like very funny. Like, go ahead.
So she's in her, somebody call it the terrible twos, but
Yeah.
also, I mean, and certainly there are days, if we're being honest, it seems to be terrible. But just as terrible as it is, it also comes with joy. So she's at a stage where she's like very independent, or at least she in her mind she is.
Right.
She kind of, you know, there, if I'm being honest, there's times that I know for a fact she runs me a lot, probably more than, you know, my husband likes. But even I see him because he's more of the stickler parent, he's more of the firm parent.
But I can give some love.
Yes, he can give love. He's more of the firm, and we kind of have to have that balance. But even we're not much different than, you know, the heterosexual couples that are listening. When it comes down to parenting, you know, two different parentings within the parenting style. So even with him being more of a firm parent, to see him be so mushy with her and so like nurturing, I love that, because I'm like, oh my God, like even his hard exterior can be broken with these little cute things that our daughter does.
He's shaking
know?
his head. He's like,
Yeah.
do tell people that.
I think one of my favorite parts, I was on our tour in Alaska, and we just got done the show, and I just decided to FaceTime in, and Monty had did something to her, and she's like, "Go on a timeout, Daddy."
I wasn't listening to her.
Yeah, he wasn't listening, and she did everything that we would do to her. It's like, you got to go sit in the corner, blah blah blah. It's like, no, you did blah blah blah, and I was like, oh my God,
yeah. She basically, like, it's just seeing her. She's very, very, I know a lot of people say, oh, my child is very intelligent, but she is very intelligent, like so intelligent that we have gotten many different recommendations for her from her schooling, her doctors. She's far beyond, she's almost 2.5 in a couple, or next week, but it's like she's 5 years old. And she put me in timeout because I wasn't listening to her. She was trying to get my attention, and I was trying to talk to, you know, Pop on the phone. And so it shows us like, hey, you know, you got to, you know, if you're going to do that to me, you got to do it to yourself. So she keeps us in check. And I love that.
I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah. And the whole, like, I don't want to do this, but the way she does it, she like repeats everything you said. It's like, hey, we got to go brush your teeth. I don't want to go brush the teeth and do the brushing teeth and put the rinse in my mouth. I don't want to do it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. We got to eat our rice before we can eat our cookie. No, I don't want to eat the rice before we eat our cookie. Like, so she's at that stage where she's just so like humorous, and she doesn't even realize she's being that way. Yes. And also she wants to mimic everything that we're doing, which is natural. Yeah. And so she, like last night, my husband cut his finger. And anytime somebody's hurt in the house, she feels like she's hurt. And of course, the Band-Aid fixes everything. Yeah. And so I'm putting a Band-Aid on my husband, and she's like, oh, it hurt. Look. And she's like pointing at her finger, and there's nothing on her finger at all. But it just, that Band-Aid makes everything better.
Kiss it.
Sure does.
Kiss the boo-boo, kiss the boo-boo. So that, just the joys of parenting, I wouldn't trade it for nothing. Even the days like last night when we lost most of our sleep, and it's frustrating at times, but you just think about, like, there are going to be days that we wish we had these moments again, and it goes by very fast. And she's almost 3, and I can't even believe it.
Yeah, it does go by lightning fast. So you're doing the right thing. Savor every second, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, especially as tired as you are today, to chat with me and to share your story with my listeners so that they have the opportunity to learn and grow as they prepare to create their own families.
Thank you for having us, sincerely, and thank you for allowing us to come to this platform to share our journey with others.
Yeah.
And again, if anybody out there listening, you can certainly follow us on our platforms, follow our journey on the, we got, I think, links in our bio to the documentary, Ellen, if you want to learn even more about our stories.
Perfect. Excellent. And I will put all of that in the show notes so that people can find exactly where to find the two of you and watch your journey as it evolves in time. Your daughter gets older and takes you on more paths, right?
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.